talking to you about your book and what you, related questions. So I'm Charlotte.
Hello.
I'm Mary.
I'm Freddie, hello.
And I'm Liam.
Hi.
What led you to be an author?
I've always wanted to write, and when I was at school I used to write in secret. I didn't show anyone any of my writing. And then when I was about 16 I had a careers interview, and we were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said I wanted to be a writer, and the careers advisor laughed at me and said, but what do you really want to be? What's your proper job going to be? And so obviously I felt about that big, and I said, well, I don't know, I want to be a writer. No, that's a pipe dream, you need a proper job. So I said, oh, okay, I'll be a teacher then. And so I trained to be a teacher, and in fact it was one of my classes that encouraged me to write my first novel and send it off.
Wow.
So when you were teaching, did any of the things that were going on in the school affect your writing? Did any?
I think they must have done.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really hard to separate the two. I spent all day with teenagers, and because I was head of drama, I'd be doing the school production as well, so I'd be rehearsing after school. So I think for that to have not crept in some way would be impossible. But I do remember having the characters very fully formed in my head, and they weren't based on anyone I was teaching. Particularly Isla in my first book. I can remember sort of seeing her in my head and knowing how she'd talk, and she was from Scotland, and I wasn't teaching anyone at the time who was from Scotland. So I would imagine it's more like the day-to-day kind of conversations teenagers have, or tutor group sessions. I remember teaching a PSHE lesson on drugs, and that kind of went into my book, some of the funny responses that I got from the kids in my class.
So do you, anything else apart from in your personal life, did that affect your writing? Did that inspire you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's something that happens in the first book I wrote, Isla and Luke, which was definitely brought up some memories of when I was 17, and unfortunately 2 of my friends died in separate car accidents, and so I think some of those emotions go into your writing, but I couldn't have written about those when I was 17. It would have been too raw.
Yeah.
So I think, your life experiences, and particularly, the older you get and the more life experiences you have, I think that comes into your writing. And I use something called emotion memory, which is another theatre studies technique. So you obviously can't have experienced everything in the world. So if I'm writing about a character who can draw the future, for example, I can't draw the future. So I think about the feelings involved in that, and then I look back through things that happened to me, and I use that feeling that I had to go into my character. So it's a really good way of being in touch with your emotions and things that might have happened to you but might not be exactly what happened to your character.
Okay, sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It means everything you do and everywhere you go is useful in some way.
Yeah.
Do you find that things that you did in your childhood really affected your books?
That's a good question. I think it's impossible to not have those memories and to use elements of them in your writing. But so far I haven't written about anyone I know. I seem to have characters pop into my head. So with the book I've just finished, Always Hope, I had this vision of a girl on a ferry screaming her head off into the sea, and it's raining and she's coming across the Irish Sea, but I didn't know who she was, why is she on the ferry, what's she so angry about, but I could see it like the start of a film, and I haven't met anyone like her, and that hasn't really been influenced by anything I've done. But then I started to work on her character, and she's failed drama schools, so she's gone to several big drama schools and had auditions and failed, and that was her absolute dream. She wanted to go to drama school. She has no plan B. She's finished her A-levels and she doesn't know what on earth she's going to do with her life, and her mum has said, if you fail that 3rd drama school audition, that is it, no more. And I failed my drama school audition, and I wanted to be an actress, but I didn't want to be an actress as much as she does. I then got offered English literature at university, and I was like, yeah, great, that'll be fine. Whereas my character Hope, it's the end of the world for her. So I think you draw threads of real life experience into elements of your writing, but I think if I were to sort of carbon copy it, it wouldn't work.
Right.
If I were to take everything from my life, a lot of it other people wouldn't be interested in. So it's sort of hand-picking moments and feelings and emotions that I find works for me anyway.
Okay.
That's a good question. I had to really think then.
So what books did you like enjoy reading when you were younger?
Anything. I was the book-eating girl. Anything I could get my hands on. My mum was brilliant. We lived in rural Wales in the middle of the Brecon Beacons, so there was no library. So we had a library mobile van thing, and she used to park outside our house, and my mum was a big reader, so my mum would go in, and this lady, I can't remember her name, she would just let me take as many books as I liked. There was no limit. So I just, I stuffed my arms full of books. Yeah, it was lovely, and it had like a little chair in there, and you could just sit in there for a bit whilst everyone on the street got their turn. So I remember that really vividly. And my mum would always take us to bookshops, mostly independents. I can picture really quirky independents, like one in Hereford, sitting upstairs and reading a book, and my mum paying for it downstairs, and me just sitting there while, I don't know what she was doing, looking around the bookshop. But it felt like I was there for the morning, and it was mostly Roald Dahl when I was younger. I would read anything he wrote, and again and again and again, and The Witches was my favourite. But I loved historical novels as well, so anything, I read like Hilary Mantel now as an adult, but as a teenager I read Jean Plaidy, who has sort of fallen out of fashion now, but I remember reading one of her first books, it's about Anne Boleyn, and thinking, wow, you can do a story about historical people. I just didn't realise you could do that, and you can put those two things together. Oh, that's fantastic. And that's what I did in The Boy Who Drew the Future.
So we also wondered, like, relating to how you think of characters and stuff.
Yeah.
We wondered how you plan your books. So do you just start writing, or do you,
used
do
to.
spider diagrams?
Now I'm much more of a planner, particularly with The Boy Who Drew the Future. So with Isla and Luke, I can remember sitting at my computer, and I wrote the plan down on a gas bill. So it was one of those brown envelopes with the clear window.
Yeah.
So I wrote on the back of that, chapter 1, this happens, like one word, chapter 2, that, and did it all the way through, and then started writing it. And then this thing happened in the book that wasn't in my plan, and then everything had to change after that. And I hand wrote it as well. I wrote it in an exercise book I'd stolen from school, and then obviously had to sit to the computer and type it all up, so I didn't handwrite again. And halfway through writing that book, the ceiling fell down on my head. My neighbour had left his bathroom and gone out, so I'm typing my book up and it's dripping on my head. I'm like, oh, what's that? And then literally the ceiling caved in and water came down. It's like, oh my gosh, have I saved it? So yeah, I now save everything obsessively and make sure no one's living above me. So with that one I didn't plan, but I did with a sequel. With the Bad Girls Club, because they review real books, so one of the books they review is The Diary of Anne Frank, I needed to write a review myself, then write a review that a teenager would write, so there was a lot more planning in that one, and which books did I want them to read and why, and how would that draw parallels from their own life. So each book I've become more of a planner rather than winging it on the back of a gas bill. And with The Boy Who Drew the Future, I went on this brilliant course with this fantastic company called the Golden Egg Academy, and they the leader of the company, called Imogen Cooper, who works for Chicken House, a great publisher, she showed me how to plot out a novel. So now I have massive sheets of paper, and I use post-its, and I do colour coding for certain characters of certain colours, and it's great because you can move stuff around without wrecking your book on the screen, which I used to do, and then sit there and always cry like I'm making such a mess of this, whereas the post-its, it's just very hands-on, and you can plot out all your themes. And now I use lots of theatre studies techniques with characters as well, so I do these big character studies, and then I shove it all up on the wall, and it feels as if something is more, controlled about the writing, I think, and you can go back and look and make sure, you've done this, done that kind of thing. So with this one, because I had the two timelines, the one in 1865 and one in modern day, I really needed to be able to hold all of that in my head, and I couldn't. So I found those techniques I learned really invaluable, and now I kind of use them a lot more than I would have done with book one.
Which book took you the longest to write out of the four?
Definitely The Boy Who Drew the Future. It took 7 years. But I had 2 children in that time, and we moved house 3 times, so it's not 7 years of sitting at a computer. But it's like it was slow writing, and then I went on this course and replanned it all. And originally it was all contemporary. There was no historical timeline to it. There was a ghost. And then I went on this course, Golden Egg, and I remember sitting at the kitchen table with Imogen, this amazing editor, and thinking this ghost is too big a character to just be a ghost. I need to go back to when he was alive and tell his story. And I wrote one scene, sat at her kitchen table, and she read it back to me, and we both went, oh my gosh. And that was it then. I could hear his voice. It was like he was sat next to me telling me his story, and then it changed the structure of the novel completely. So that was a really complicated one to write. But when I read it back, it just seems so easy, and I just think, oh, the work that went into that.
Do you, like, when you're coming out with your characters, do you imagine them, as you said, with the ghost and the boy?
Yeah.
Do you imagine them, like, right next to you?
I do.
Sort of telling you what to write?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a really overactive imagination. Have like really still vivid nightmares. I go into my dreams and I can pause them and I can remember them. And so, in fact, I dreamt the idea for this. I dreamt about a boy who drew the future, and he draws this horrific future and someone dies. And I told myself in my dream to remember it, and I didn't. And then later on in the day, I think it was my husband, he said something to me and it broke my dream. Do you know when someone says something?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, the dream. So I ran upstairs, wrote down the dream, and then I was like, who on earth is this boy and how can he draw the future? And who's just died? And it was the end of the novel, and I needed to work all the way back to the beginning. So for me, it's a lot of my writing feels like I almost know these people. And with Always Hope, which I've just finished, which came so quickly, it's about 100,000 words. It's the longest novel I've written, and it came in about 7 or 8 months. And I remember, so lots of my friends, writer friends, we put on Twitter or Facebook how many words we've done that day. And I can remember typing one day 5,000 words today. I was like, oh my God, I've written 5,000 words. Normally I'm a 1,000 word girl, and that's it. And they might be really rubbish words as well. But this was just pouring out of me. And I finished it and I gave it to my husband to read, and he's super critical, so I knew, if it was rubbish, he would let me know. And he was reading it, and my daughter came in, and I think I was fiddling with a scene or something, and she interrupted me, and I said something like, oh, hang on, Hope. And she's called Evie. I was like, what? I've just called my daughter one of my character names, and they felt so real. Oh, the characters in this novel, there's a lot in the hospital, and it feels like they're real people in hospital. I can imagine going into a ward and seeing my characters, and I haven't had that before. This novel felt really different, and I don't know whether each novel will feel really different or not. It's interesting. So yeah, they feel very real to me.
I enjoy writing, but I'm not very good at the planning bit. I just write it down and realise halfway through what was that? And why is he there?
Yeah.
Have you got any tips to sort of like help me
Yes.
get my head around it?
What I now do is when I finished my first draft, which was a mess, I ban myself from showing it to anyone, and then I send it to my Kindle, and I use a text-to-speech function, so you can have it read to you.
Oh.
So it's like sitting and listening to an audiobook. And you can use it on Word as well. If you Google Word text-to-speech, then if you've got Word, you can use it in that way as well. And it's brilliant because it makes it feel like it's someone else's work, and you feel very objective about it. And what I do is I hook it up to my car, so I can't tamper with it. I'm not near my laptop, and I listen to it as I'm driving along, so I can't make notes or anything. I'm just listening to the story, and it's so embarrassing. I hear all the spelling mistakes. I hear all the things like you just said that don't work. I hear all the characters who are talking nonsense, and I have that, why is he doing that in that room? What on earth were you thinking? And then I go home and I listen to it again with a notebook, and I still keep my computer away from me. Then the third time, when I've made all my notes, I go back and I change them on the screen. Then I listen to it again, and that just saves me so much time, because it really does feel like someone else is writing. And with my Kindle, you can select an accent, you can select if you want a male voice or a female voice. So with Hope, I have a female read it. With The Boy Who Drew the Future, I had a male voice read it. And again, it just depersonalises your writing. When I'm looking at it on screen, I'm so close to it, I can't be objective about it. I either think it's awful or the best thing anyone's ever written, and there's nothing in between. So I find listening to it, someone else reading it really helps me. And if I read it out loud on my own, it's okay, but it's not the same.
So maybe, I'm sure most of the ideas that come into your head are pure gold, but But when you say start writing a story, have you ever thought, oh, maybe this isn't going to work, and maybe just give up on it? Or
Yeah, I've written a whole novel that I then deleted because I thought it was really average. And I'd sent it. It was an adult novel. I sent it to an adult agent. She liked it. And I can remember reading it thinking, this is the kind of book I would leave behind on holiday. I would read it and think, yeah, that's okay. But I'll leave it on the shelf for someone else. And I thought, do I really want my name with that, with something that's okay? And so I pressed delete, and then I told her, and she was really cross. And I can remember thinking, no, that's the right decision, and I've never regretted it. And there's been a few things that I've started that I've thought, I'm not really sure where that's going to go. I'll leave that for now. So I've got a file called Rhian's Writing, and in it are probably just the beginnings of maybe 5 or 6, ideas that have come to me, but I haven't got time for them right now. But I find when I'm working on a book, every writer says this, you get all these amazing new ideas. The new idea looks so much better than the one you're working on, please write me. And so I find if I just write a bit of it and shove it away, then I can concentrate on the one I should be. And I've definitely learned you've got to finish the one you're writing.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered sequels to some of your books?
Yes. So Isla and Luke is a sequel, so there's a second book to that. And with The Boy Who Drew the Future, I have an idea of a sequel, which my editor likes the sound of. But then I've got this queue of other books that are in my head that I need to get out. So I've got the next 3 planned, which are nothing to do with The Boy Who Drew the Future, but then I could come back to that at some point. I've got quite a clear idea of what the sequel would be. But I think I've got too many new ideas, so I think I tend to do standalones, just one book on its own, because I'm already itching to do the next book.
You said that when you were younger, a careers advisor told you that...
Laughed in my face.
Yeah, that being a writer wasn't a really plausible idea as an ambition. What one piece of advice would you give to someone who's in the same position?
Don't listen to your careers advisor. If you know there's something you think you'd be quite good at, the most important thing to do is to not let anyone tread on your dreams, and even if they're secret dreams and you keep going yourself in private, which I did, I think it's really important to know that, of course there's people out there who are writers. It might not earn you a fortune, but here I am doing it. And there's people who, are Olympic athletes, and you imagine everybody said to everyone who had a dream, don't be ridiculous, no one would ever do anything, would they? So I think it's really important to hang on to your dreams and not let anyone crush them.
So you were saying how you did all your writing in secret, but did you sort of let your mum know, and did she sort of encourage you to do it more?
I used to make my mum read my poetry. Which was about tulips and daffodils and love and that kind of thing. And I remember her being really encouraging, and they must have been really awful. And I had a lovely primary school teacher who read my 17-page story about the fairy at the bottom of the garden. And I can remember her saying to my mum, she can actually write. I mean, it must have been so, I don't know, rubbish and very much like, a book I just read probably. But I can remember that. And I remember at secondary, a Welsh English teacher, he taught English, but he was Welsh, very strong accent, saying, yeah, you'll be a writer, and me just, going to sleep, dreaming of that every night, and that kind of thing. Those little gems, those little moments where, you win a small competition or something, just makes you feel, actually, yeah, maybe I can. But it's a lot of hard work. You've got to, I think, to be a writer, you've got to want to write and need to write, and I do. I get really grumpy if I'm not writing, really grumpy. It's like a physical thing I'm drawn to do.
What sort of book do you always have near you? Like, is there a favourite book that goes everywhere with you?
Yeah, it's called Letters of Note. I don't know if you've heard of it. So I came across it last year. It's amazing. So it's quite big and it's quite heavy, so I don't carry it around with me everywhere, but it's on the coffee table at home, and I look at it probably every day. And in it are beautiful letters, either from famous people or not famous people, across the whole age range. that have been handwritten from someone to someone else. So there's one from a little girl to Abraham Lincoln telling him to grow whiskers, to grow a beard. There's letters from Iggy Pop to people. There's letters from murderers, there's letters from politicians, there's letters from writers to other writers. It's just fascinating. And you see the original letter, and then it's obviously typed out. And they do letters live in London, so you get lots of famous people reading out like love letters, or just letters from completely ordinary people, but during wartime, or there's something interesting about them. And then they're on Twitter, but they compiled it into a book, and it's every single letter there's a potential story idea. Excuse me. So for me, it's hugely interesting. But I bought it for so many people. I think it's just got that universal appeal. It's fascinating. Really good book.
What's it called again?
Letters of Note.
Oh, okay. Wait a second.
Yeah, it sounds like a really captivating
It
book.
is. It's fascinating. There's just every single letter. There's something interesting in it, and it's got such a huge diverse appeal as well. No matter how old you are or what your religion is or ethnicity or whatever, there's just everyone in the world is in that book. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it on my Kindle when I get home.
Yeah, it's probably better to get it on the Kindle because it's quite heavy.
Yeah.
What was the last book that you read?
It's the book I'm reading at the moment. It's called Beautiful Broken Things, and it's by a debut novelist, and it's about friendship, and there's no romance in it whatsoever. It's a teen book, and I think the author particularly wanted to look at that aspect of friendship. I read everything. I read younger children's books, I read adult fiction, I read non-fiction, just anything. I find everything so interesting. I have to sort of slow myself down as well. If it's a good book, I can practically eat it. So yeah.
Well, thank you for telling us.
That's okay. Great questions. Thank you.
Secrets.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
thank you for the book recommendation.
You'll enjoy that.
Enjoy reading
Really good. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.